How would you describe the 39-31 in the second half? Because look, momentum it's not something that necessarily can carry over through an offseason when you make as many changes as people expect the Cubs to do. But what do you take from that run that you guys went on in the second half?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. So I do think momentum. I think we have momentum organizationally. You know, I was in Arizona yesterday watching the Instructional League. You know, the energy down there is fantastic. The vibe, the confidence in those young players is excellent. I felt that, you know, in the second half that it wasn't only about winning and losing. It was about how certain guys were pitching and how certain guys were playing that, you know, have a chance to really have a significant impact on us. So I don't think it was only about wins and losses, because I agree with you. I think a good second half or a bad second half, I mean, one of the beauties of our game is that you sort of zero those things out going into the next season. But I do think they were really good signs, both in the minor leagues and then obviously in the big leagues, where, you know, some of the players that I think we have, you know, high hopes for and hope can play significant roles, you know, played really well. So I was thrilled that we played really hard and won a lot of games. And to me, you know, beyond the wins and losses, I was just so impressed by just the competitiveness. The players kept playing hard. You know, they were into every game. They were prepared for every game. The coaching staff continued to teach. And, you know, that sounds like it should be the norm. It should be the norm. It's not the norm. When you look around and you play other teams and you notice their energy, or you look down at their bench, you know, during the game, and it's, you know, either not enthusiastic or there's not a lot of guys there. I mean, you really notice which teams continue to run through the finish line and a lot don't. And, you know, it's a long season, and we joked about that clip from opening day, but it does feel like forever ago. And I think that when you're a player and the team is out of it, and, you know, that grind can kind of wear teams down when they're not in the race. And the fact that our coaching staff and our players did what they did at the end, this gives me not only just a lot of pride in what they did, but also it gives me a lot of hope and confidence for the future that that's the kind of character that we have down there.
Why do you think your team did that this season in the way they did, picked it up and ran with it, and then had that kind of want to? And we even heard about it later, you know, in the Mets press conference. They talked about the draw that they had in the playoffs, and one of the things that was said was we were swept by the Cubs. That was a performance that resonated past the season ending.
I mean, I'm trying to think where to start my answer with that, but yeah, I thought, I don't know where they got the desire from. I think part of it was we got healthy in a lot of ways. You know, there was moments of the season where our inexperience really showed in sort of April and May. And then at the same time, we got hurt. We had that, you know, one stretch where, you know, I think we were down 4 starting pitchers. And we just, at that point in the season, did not have the pitching depth or experience to handle it. We didn't. And it showed. We had long losing streaks. We were getting blown out of games early. It was clearly, unacceptable performances. We just didn't have the depth to handle it. As we got later in the season, a lot of the pitchers that end up stepping up later on, we acquired Wesneski. He really stepped up. Assad, really stepped up. Sampson, kind of got better and better as the season went on. A bunch of guys in the bullpen stepped up in their new roles. Guys like Brandon Hughes, and that really helped that. So we had a better ability to withstand some injuries and to get through some rough stretches. We just didn't have that early in the season, and that's no excuse. I mean, ultimately, we were 8 games over in the second half, but it ultimately doesn't matter. We took ourselves out of the race early, and that's what we have to, going forward, we have to avoid. We have to build on that depth, continue to add guys underneath it, and get to a place where, if we lose 4 starters or lose a bunch of position players, we're able to withstand that. And that's the goal. I think, our system is strong. I mean, we lack some of the star power we had last time. I do think we have tremendous depth in the farm system, and as that continues to mature, my hope is that we can get past those kind of concerns where you're worried about injuries because you don't have the ability to handle them. And we handled that much better in the second half, and it does give me a lot of confidence.
Cubs president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, joining us here on The Score. If we're throwing out wins and losses in evaluations because of where you guys are at, how do you go about evaluating David Ross as a manager?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think one of the main, or if not the main job of a manager is to, motivation, sounds, a little bit, high school, college football-y, but like to get your players to show up prepared every single day. It's not about, it's a long season. You're not going to, the emotion you get in some sports isn't there, understandably. It's not the playoffs. But to get your players to come in every single day in a good headspace, ready to try to win the game that night, and just do that every single night, I think he does an incredible job of that. He's the same person every day, and he, he's loud, he's excitable, he's really positive, and then he has a great ability to take that positivity. But when you cross it, or he has to give you some tough love, he does it exceptionally well. And so his ability to motivate the coaches, motivate the players to come in and try to win a game every night is remarkable. I think from a strategic standpoint, I think like any of us in any job, like he'll continue to get better year after year. I think there's been real improvement. He and Andy Green work really well together, but I think we're lucky to have David. I think he's done an excellent job, and I think he has a chance, with just continued, time in that chair, just to keep getting better and better and better. Like I said, the Cubs are lucky to have him.
As you know, Tom Ricketts gave a letter at the day after you had your press conference to fans, and he talked a lot about how the season felt like two seasons, a little bit like what you've touched on. And he also said, "We will be active in free agency and have the necessary resources to substantially supplement our current roster. As Jed has demonstrated, we will be driven by intelligent decision-making as we build a roster that can win games in the postseason year in and year out." When you hear those words, and you know them well, I'm sure they've been said in the office, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I'm fortunate that, I have bosses that, they trust my decision-making. I know that, I know what they expect from a process standpoint, that if we're going to, commit significant dollars or assets in a trade, that I'm going to come prepared. I'm going to have thought of everything, and I can sort of I can defend my case, so to speak, and rightfully, I think anyone should expect that. But I have total confidence that if I do that, based on what I've watched with Theo, from the GM seat and watched with me, like I know that if I provide the right information and that certainly I can defend my case and I've thought of everything, then they're always supportive, and I love that, and it's a great feeling knowing that they'll be supportive. So ultimately, like it will be my decision on how we spend, and we want to be aggressive, we want to be active. We have real holes on our roster that we want to fill. I think when I talk about intelligent spending, is that I do have a vision for what we want to create. We want to create something special. We want to create something that we're really proud of. That we know going into every season that we feel like we have a chance to play deep into October, and a real championship quality roster. And it is just a fact that you can make some decisions in this game that feel really good in the short term and have real long-term consequences. And I think that's always in my mind, that you have to temper. Sometimes temper that aggressiveness and say, hey, is this going to, when we think we should be competing for championships every year and be a great organization, will this transaction hurt us or help us? And you have to keep that in mind. That's, I don't think that I'm saying anything novel. I think that's just the nature of baseball contracts, is that you have to think about both the short term and the long term. And that's really what I mean by intelligent spending. Clearly we want to be as competitive as possible. We want to, fill holes and add players. And that part is without question. We just want to do it in a way that won't hinder what we're trying to build.
I was intrigued with the concept of intelligent spending, and I was just curious, like overall, if you thought that maybe the way to game the system now with some of these contracts, where instead of longer term, you're talking about greater AAV on free agents, and can that be construed as intelligent spending, where instead of taking $200 million and spreading it out over, or $300 million and spreading it out over 14 years or 10 years, you look at a player and say, you know what, this player is worth $40 million per for 5 years. Can that even fit inside the construct of intelligent spending?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that concept. You know, a little bit of what we did with Stroman's deal was that, you know, we gave him a high AV on a shorter deal, and I do think those oftentimes do make sense. And what you touched on is something that we think about all the time, which is the length of the deals and those years in some of the deals that you get in your mid to late 30s. That, you know, that significant outlay of money could be a player at that point that could really help you, you know, maybe get over the hump to go to the World Series or win the World Series. And if you don't have those resources, and listen, you know, we have tremendous resources because of our tremendous fan base, but, you know, obviously, like every place, those are finite, and so you have to think with that mindset that, you know, will this transaction, you know, be additive, or could it hurt us, you know, long term? And the length is what you mentioned, and clearly that's a real consideration as you think through free agent contracts.
When you say there are holes on this roster, and then you also mentioned Marcus Stroman, I immediately think of Stroman's push to recruit Carlos Correa last offseason. And then I want to ask you, what are those holes that you would like to fill? What are the priorities that you want to see on this team?
We definitely need to continue to add offensively. You know, we didn't have enough power this year. You know, when I look at kind of the breakdown of our season, you know, I mentioned this in the press conference that we just didn't blow anyone out. We played so many close games, and that's taxing on your bullpen. And it also brings luck into the equation a lot. You know, you're playing a lot of close games. You're actively bringing randomness into the game. The best teams blow people out, you know, and you know, go back and look at the 2016 team. We blew everyone out. We blew everyone out. And, you know, look at like teams like the Braves or the Dodgers, and what they do in games that are decided by 5 or more runs, and their record is incredible. That to me is the mark of a really good team. You know, if you have a great bullpen, you know, occasionally you can have a season where you're really, really good in 1 or 2 run games, but like over, you know, historically, you know, 1 run games are usually around a 500-ish record, give or take a little bit. And, you know, the teams that really separate themselves are teams that can spread games out. We had no ability to do that this year, and we have to improve that ability. Some of that I really believe is coming, you know, through the farm system, but we also have to look externally as well and find players that can help us build that kind of offense where we do have the ability to spread some games out and win some games, you know, 8-2 or 7-1, and you know, we couldn't do that in 2022.
Jed, where do you think the Cubs are organizationally when it comes to pitching development?
Getting better continuously. You know, we spent a lot of time and energy, even going back a little while, but like spending a lot of 2019 creating a plan of a kind of a plan going forward, and you know, starting in that fall, really executing that plan by making Craig Breslow the director of pitching. Like everyone, the things slowed up and the pause button got hit a bit in 2020, this without a minor league season. But certainly I feel like we've made tremendous progress in our pitching development. When you look at, you know, our performance in the minor leagues, you know, we're among the leaders in the minor leagues, and in pitching statistics, we were among the leaders in pitching velocity, which is a big change from the past. So we're getting there. I don't think there's a finish line. I don't think we're ever going to feel like we've figured out pitching development or we're there. But I feel really good about where we are. And it's really, I think the first time, since I've been here, where I feel like I look down at the minor leagues and think to myself, like, okay, there are at every level, there are, a lot of pitchers that have a chance to impact the Cubs. We have real depth. Now, there's never enough depth, and that depth can go away really quickly, and so you can't stop that process. But I do feel like our depth, pitching-wise, is probably at the highest point it's been since I've been here, since I got here in 2011. And that gives me a lot of pride. We have a lot of really good people working on it, and we'll continue to try to get better and better. But I do think it's in a good place right now.
How much has Carter Hawkins and that addition helped? I know we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the season, but just his organizational knowledge coming over from Cleveland, seeing what they're doing right now in the playoffs, how much have you combined that knowledge to get to a point where you're seeing that relationship pay off?
Yeah, and he's been amazingly helpful. Such a significant part of why I was drawn to him, besides just the fact that he's a tremendous worker and a really great person and really intelligent, was that he learned in an excellent organization, and one that is forced to almost do everything through the lens of development, right? Like the Guardians, Indians, they never had the ability to spend in free agency. I think they're able to extend Jose Ramirez. That's one of the first star players they've been able to extend. In the past, they've had to trade the guys like Kluber, they've had to trade guys like Lindor away, and so everything is viewed through the lens of development. And so not only does he bring all of his personal skills, but also the place he learned. I think they just have a tremendous infrastructure of development, and also a tremendous attitude of our job is to get every player in the system better every day. And he brings that energy here, and I think it's really rubbed off, and will continue to influence this year for a long time.
Jed, I know that you want to just kind of put your head down and let the proof be in the pudding when it comes to the next great Cubs team that you build. But considering, this is the flagship station, we reach millions of people on this radio station, a lot of them Cub fans. What's your message to them going into this offseason, considering some of the baseball that they've had to consume over the last two seasons?
Yeah, I guess my message would be, we got here in 2011. Obviously, we had a plan to build something really special. We executed that plan, and we did build something really special. And obviously, you can't run the same play over and over. It doesn't work. The game evolves. But I feel like we have a plan. We have a vision of what we're going to build. We're going to learn from some of the mistakes from last time and try to extend that window longer. But we're going to take our fans on a very similar journey. We're going to build something really special, and we're going to get to a place where we're back in the playoffs every single year. We're going to have a team that I think there's a difference between just being at the bottom of the playoffs versus like being a team that goes in and is one of those teams that has a chance to win every year, and that's the goal. If you take enough shots, at the target year after year after year, you're going to win titles, and you're going to have these awesome October runs, and that's what we're building. And we're going to do we're going to do it as fast as we possibly can, but we're also not going to be hasty in our decision making, because we know that sometimes you have to build a great foundation. You have to make really smart decisions along the way to build something really special. And not only do I have confidence that we're going to do it here because we've done it already, but also when I look around baseball at some of the teams that are still playing, a lot of them have gone through really well-run processes where sometimes they had to take a little bit of a longer view. But when that longer view pays off, when it really pays off, I think you're going to get championship level baseball for a lot of years.